We're going to look at percents and graphs today. The learning targets are to find percents and percent change, and also that you can create and analyze bar graphs and circle graphs. To find a percent given a fraction, what you want to be able to do is divide the numerator by the denominator. So, for example, if you received 21 out of 24 in your last quiz, what percentage of the questions did you answer correctly? What you can do on this one is divide and take 21 divided by 24 on your calculator, and it will turn it into a decimal for you. So if you do 21 divided by 24, we see that it's 0.875. Okay, so now what we need to be able to do is turn that into a percentage. In order to turn a decimal into a percent, either move the decimal places 2 places to the right, or the other thing you can do is multiply the decimal by 100 and get a percent. So let's go back to the one we just had here. If we want to change this 0.875 now to a percent, move it over 2 times the decimal place, and that changes into 87.5%. Or the other way it's said is you can multiply by 100. A lot of people like to do these ones by setting up a proportion. You can do 21 out of 24 equals what percent out of 100. And now if you cross multiply and divide, you get the same answer. So we're going to multiply, cross multiply, so multiply 21 by 100, and then divide by the 24. So if you do that on your calculator too, it also gives you the same answer. So if you do 21 times 100 divided by 24, cross multiply and divide, you also get 87.5%. So that's another way that you can go through and do it. All right, so why don't you pause the video quick, see if you can express this one then as a percent. All right, let's see what you got. Either you can, like we talked about before, move this over twice, so it turns into 2.35%, or like we also said, you can put that on your calculator as the number, it says 0.0235, and multiply that by 100, which would be another way to do it. And you get the same answer either way. All right, some other things you should know about percents is in word problems means that you are trying to find part. Okay, of means the total. So when you're doing percentage problems and you want to set them up as a proportion, if you like doing it that way, we always do our percentage out of 100, because 100 is the total percent, and then you want your part, the is, over the total, the of, and you can solve any percentage problem using a little proportion like this. All right, let's try a few out here. So on your note sheet, you have this example. It says, what percent is 45 of 78? So if you were going to set that up, you want to do what percent, so we don't know what the percentage is. We can use a variable like x out of 100 equals, it is 45 of 78. So is 45, that's telling us that's the top number, that's the part, of 78. Of means the total, so that goes on the bottom. So now if you do like we did before, cross multiply and divide, we should get the answer. So you can go on your calculator, type this in, and we should be able to do it. Remember, you always cross multiply when there's an equals here. So we want to multiply 100 times 45. And then divide by the other number, which here would be 78. Cross multiply and divide, and we get, looks like the answer is about 57.7%. So that would be the percentage out of 100. Why don't you pause it and try this next example on your own, see if you can do that one. All right, let's see what you got. This one says what percent, so again, we don't know what the percent is, out of 100, of 45. Now this one's a little backwards from the first one. Of 45, that's our total. That should go on the bottom. Is 115. That should go on the top. So now if you cross multiply and divide this one out, it actually comes out to be more than 100% because 115 is a bigger number than 45. You should have gotten 255.6% is approximately the percentage there. All right, let's try one more together. This next one, again, a little different from the first two. 12 is 15% of what number? Now this one, they actually tell us a percentage. So that should go over 100%. It's 15 out of 100%. Equals, now we got to get our is and of right here. 12 is, okay, that's our top number. Of what number? We don't know what the total is here. We should put a variable on the bottom. Again, cross multiply. So we want to multiply these two numbers together and then divide by 15. And if you go through and do that, you should get that this one ends up being 80. 80 is the total that 12 would be out of. All right. Let's try looking at some percent increase or decrease problems. Anytime you get a percent change in the problem, where it's either increasing or decreasing, you want to find the difference in the amounts over the original amount. Recall that difference means that you need to be subtracting. Okay, so you got to find the difference in the amounts over the original to find percent change. Let's look at some examples of these problems. The first one on your sheet says the number of students at Franklin High School increased from 840 to 910 students over a 5-year period. What is the percent increase? Okay, so what we want to do is find those two things. Let's start with the original amount. What was the original amount here? Well, it said from 840, so we want to put 840 on the bottom. And then what we need to do is find the difference in the amount on the tops. So they don't tell us the difference here. We need to subtract. So what we're going to have to do is take 910 students minus the original 840 and see what is the difference there. Okay, and that would end up being 70 students. So 70 is the difference, 840 is the original amount. Now if we change that into a percentage, then we have the answer. So you can either divide these and then move the decimal point over 2 times like we did before. If you want to, you can set it equal to what percentage out of 100 and cross multiply and divide. And that way also works however you want to do it. Let's do it that way. Let's multiply, cross multiply and divide here. So if we go on our calculator and do 70 times 100 and divide by 840, we should get our percentage. And it looks like it turns out to be about 8.3%. Approximately 8.3%. Okay, so look for what you're looking for is difference over original. Why don't you pause it, try number 2 here, see how you do. All right, let's see how you did. TV was originally $400, so they tell us right there, that's your original amount, that should go on bottom. On top now we need the difference, but it is now 345. If you put 345 just by itself on top, not correct. We need the difference, remember. So what is the difference in the prices? We need to take 400 and subtract 345 to find the difference in price. And if you subtract that, that's 55 out of 400. So now change that into a percentage and you have the answer. If you divide them, it's about 0.1375, and if you change that to a percentage, then it'd be 13.75%. would be the correct answer. Okay, some other type of problems that you may see or run into in real life is maybe if you have some type of discount or you have to figure out tax on something. This is ideal using percentages and decimals to find out what the new cost is going to be of the item. So on number 3 here, the first one on A is talking about an umbrella. You want to buy a $14 umbrella. It is discounted 20% at the store. However, you do need to pay 6% tax on it. What's the total price going to be? Well, whenever you're buying something, you always get the discount applied first before you pay your tax. So what we got to do here first is find out, all right, what is this discount going to be? So we want to find out what's a 20% discount of $14. So what we can do is the same thing we were doing before. Percentage is always out of 100. Okay, put that equal to what's the discount going to be out of $14. So if we cross multiply and divide, that's going to come out to be $2.80. So that's the discounted amount. Now we want to figure out what are we going to now pay for this umbrella. So what we would have to do here is a little subtraction. Let's take $14 minus $2.80 and see what the new cost is. And if we subtract that, the new price is going to be $11.20. However, that's still not what we're going to pay. We need to figure out what's the tax going to be. So what's the tax on an $11.20 item? Well, 6%, I always put, again, percentage out of 100. And we can set up a little proportion to figure that out. What's the tax going to be on $11.20? So if we cross multiply and divide like we've been doing before, that's going to come out to be 67 cents. All right, finally, to get the price now, we know what the tax is. We know how much the item costs after the discount. If we now add those two together, we should get the total cost. So the total cost would be $11.87. Okay, so that would be the cost of this item. Why don't you pause it, try B out, see if you can find that one. All right, let's see how you did. If you went and did the similar thing to how we did part A here, first find out what is that 30% discount going to be on a $70 item. You should have found that the discount is going to be $21, which means the new price by subtracting is going to be $49. Then you got to do a percentage with 6.5% tax and find out what the tax is going to be. If you do that, the tax on this $49 item should have been about $3.19. So finally add these two up, and the total price, if you did it correctly, should have been $52. $52.19. So if you did that one right, you're right on the mark here of what you're supposed to be doing. All right, so that's percents, decimals, that's all stuff. Hopefully you should have a little bit of idea from coming into this class. The other thing we're going to look at today is bar graphs and circle graphs. If you want to make a bar or circle graph, you're going to get some data or some information, and you want to be able to represent that in a graphical manner. So here they got some a sports magazine took a survey among its readers and each reader indicated their favorite sport. We want to now put this on a bar graph. So what you got to do is find the amount. Okay, in this case, 1,200 for volleyball. Locate where that is on the graph. If you're making your own graph, you'd have to put it on there and then indicate where every item should go. So volleyball, if there's 1,200 people, find where 1,200 is, which is here, and then on the graph, draw a bar, and then usually you kind of shade it in here. So there would be the amount for volleyball. Baseball has 900 people that indicated its favorite. Now 900 is not there. We can see 800 and 1,000 though. 900 is halfway in between those. So as best as possible, you want to indicate where half is and draw a new bar graph there. Okay, if you keep going now, um, soccer, 1,500, which would be halfway between 14 and 16. Over here. If you want to shade it in, you're certainly welcome to. Football is going to be 1,800. That one's right there. And finally, basketball looks like 600. So there would be a bar graph. So now you graphically can see which one's the most, which one's the least, and it's very easy for looking at information. All right, they may ask you questions on it. If you get questions about the bar graph, then you should be able to answer. For example, which is the least popular sport? Well, very easily you can see the bar for basketball is the lowest, so that would be the least popular in this survey. Which is the most popular sport? The tallest one easily you can see is football. You have the same number of votes for soccer and football. How many more votes will soccer require? Well, we know from before, or looking at our bar graph here, that soccer has 1,500 people that indicated it was the most. Okay, it's halfway in between there. Okay, football you can see is 1,800. If you want to know how many more, we'd want to find the difference, subtract. So it looks like 300 is the answer. So for question 4, 200 more readers voted for soccer. Would it be the new top one on this? No. We just found out you would need 300 more just to tie. 200 will not be enough for soccer to be the most popular. All right, that's bar graphs. Circle graphs. So we'll use the same data here. If you want to make a circle graph, you need to take the information and make it into percentages. Circle graphs almost always indicate the amount of information as a percent. You've maybe seen these in like your social studies textbook or newspapers or websites. So what we want to do here is turn each of these categories into a percentage. In order to do that, we need to know what's the total. So what we want to do first is add up all this information. How many total people were in the survey? So if we take the 1,200 people who said volleyball, 900 for baseball, 1,500 for soccer, 1,800 for football, and 600 for basketball, and add them all up, we see here that the total is going to be 6,000 people in the survey. Okay, now we want to change all of this to a percentage. So to change it to a percent, we again divide. Okay, just like before, you want to take the total divided by, or the amount divided by the total, and then either move the decimal point over 2 times or multiply by 100. So on our calculators, for example, if we want to do volleyball, take 1,200 divided by 6,000, our total, and we get 0.2. Now, you either need to move the decimal point over 2 times, or we could multiply this by 100, and you can see it's 20%. Okay, why don't you pause it, try finding the other ones here quick, and then check to see how you did. All right, if you kept going on these other ones, you should have gotten 15% for baseball if you did it correctly, 25% for soccer. Football comes out to be 30%, and basketball should have came out to be 10%. All right, so once you got the percentages in there, now what you want to do on your circle graph is indicate how much of each category that takes up. You want to try to estimate what chunk of the circle it's going to be as best as possible. With the information we got here, one thing you could maybe look at is like volleyball and football together, that's 50% or half. So if you wanted to, you could split the circle directly in half here. Okay, make a semicircle, and now 30 and 20, you could kind of estimate about how much 30% is and how much 20% is as best as possible, maybe about there. So this would be, you'd want to label it football, and then indicate the percentage on there too, which would be 30%. The rest of this then would be volleyball, and that'd be 20%. Now we got to keep going. Soccer, 25%. That would be 1/4 or a quarter. So if we just split this in half, we got soccer being 25%. We have 2 categories left, basketball and baseball. So kind of estimate as best as possible. Should be a little bit slightly more here of this pie should be baseball than basketball. So baseball is 15%. And basketball would be our last 10%. So now we got a circle graph showing all the information. Okay. If you are asked to answer questions out, hopefully you can do that. Like what percent of the voters polled chose baseball as their favorite sport. If you look back at what we just did, it said that baseball was 15%. If the poll is indicative of how the 20,000 people of Farmington would actually vote, what's the best estimate of the number of votes volleyball would receive? Okay, so now we want to look, volleyball, if we go back, we can see was 20% of the vote. So if we're going to do this, we know 20% is a percentage out of 100 that people said was their favorite sport. We can set this up as a proportion, but we need to know where to put this 20,000. 20,000 is the total people. So just like 100 is a total, 20,000 is a total, that should go on bottom. Then you want to put some kind of variable on top. Now we can cross multiply and divide like we've done before, and we can find that out. So if you go through and cross multiply and divide, you find out that 4,000 people out of the 20,000 would vote for volleyball if about 20% of the people liked it as their favorite sport. All right. Finally, if you were to draw an accurate circle graph using a protractor, what would be the central angle of the sector measure for each sport in degrees? So when we had made the circle graph, we kind of estimated, what if we wanted to be more exact and use a protractor? We want to know what's the angle for each of these. We should be able to figure that out by doing, again, a proportion. Okay, so if we look back at ours, again, let's go with some, let's start with volleyball here, 20%. If we know 20% out of 100 people like volleyball, and we want to find the angles in degrees that we would use, we need to know how many total degrees are in a circle. Well, hopefully you remember back from last year in geometry, there is a total of 360 degrees in a circle. So if we want to know how many of those 360 would equal 20%, we'd put some kind of variable there. So cross multiply and divide like we've been doing in this lesson, and we can find that out. 20 times 360 divided by 100 tells us that volleyball should be a 72 degree sector of that circle if we were to make an accurate circle graph. So this would end up being 72 degrees. Why don't you guys pause it, see if you can find the other angles for each category, similar to how we just found volleyball. All right, let's see how you did. If you did it correctly, baseball should have came out to be 54 degrees of the circle. Soccer is 25% or 1/4 of 360 would be 90 degrees, or if you remember, that's a right angle. This would be 108 degrees for football. And finally, basketball should have came out to be 36 degrees. Okay, try some of the worksheet problems out now.